I invite you to consider a hypothetical scenario with me. It's late at night, you're just about to log off and go to bed, and one more signature spawns in your home system. So you hop into an exploration frig and go to scan it down. It's a wormhole. You warp to the wormhole to see where it might go, and just as you land on grid with the wormhole, a Covert Ops frigate drops wormhole jump cloak and just sits there. What do you do? Take a minute to think about it. If your answer is that you ram the Cov Ops frig at full speed, target it, activate your blasters and warp scram, because of course your exploration frigate has blasters and a warp scrambler on it, congratulations. That is the correct answer. And then what happens next? Well, if you're me, you start scrambling like mad to turn on your screen recorder on your ring light because this is good content. And then his buddy in the flycatcher drops wormhole jump cloak and you make this face. There's not much you can do. This is not a fight that a probe wins. You die, you don't even bother warping up your pod because you'll get back home faster if they pod you. And then as your pod evaporates and your corpse floats in the dark cold of space, you make this face, knowing that you've just been caught in a clever trap. But you can lay clever traps too. Mobile Small Warp Disruptor 1 Blueprint, 7.5 million-esque. That's right, it's time for the long prophesied Corvette Dingha Cynabal solo PvP episode, Take 2, null-sec edition. This is Bill. Bill wants to build a Cynabal and join the Angel Cartel cause in Zarzak, but he's not making it easy on himself. Okay, so building a mobile small warp disruptor is more complicated than building a regular Tech 1 module, but not that much more complicated. You'll see here it does require all of the standard minerals, but it also requires that we have 3 Warp Scrambler 1s and 11 electronic parts. We have plenty of Warp Scramblers, but all of the Warp Scramblers we've collected from loot, and basic Tech 1 modules do not drop in loot, so they're all meta Warp Scramblers, which means we're going to need to buy Warp Scrambler 1 Blueprint, 400,000 ISK. Now with that taken care of, all that remains is these electronic parts. So where do we get electronic parts? Well, it turns out they're actually just a regular NPC trade good commodity that you can buy from NPCs and sell to other NPCs. There actually is a way to make ISK in this game by buying commodities in one part of space where they're cheaper and selling them to NPCs in another part of space where they're a little bit more expensive, but the margins we made there are trivial. So most of these trade goods are just largely ignored, but some of them are used for manufacturing ingredients, and we can buy electronic parts right here in Albrez. Virtually 0 ISK. And just like that, we've got 3 bubbles in the oven. Our mobile small warp disruptors have finished building, and it's time to go hunting. I would like you to meet Frida. Way back in the first solo PvP episode, I spent a lot of time talking about the different ways you can fit a catalyst and how the mid slots in the weapon systems really define what the ship's trying to do. I was talking about how the catalyst actually has trouble in a 1v1 situation because having only 2 mid slots and not being especially fast inherently, it's very hard for it to maintain its desired range control either with blasters or with railguns. I did say in that episode that a blaster microwarp drive scram fit is quite interesting, and the thing that's interesting about it is it's actually really strong against an opponent who doesn't have a scram themselves. Now, in faction warfare space, most of your opponents will have scrams, or they'll be in a much faster kiting ship that you'll just never get within blaster range of. But hunting with a bubble, our bubble's going to do the initial tackle, we know where they're going to land, and most of our opponents will not have scrams fit. So let's give this a shot. All we got to do is load Frida up with 3 bubbles, and we'll also need some carbon for this endeavor. Now let's head out to Syndicate. We're heading out to Syndicate, of course, because bubbles can only be used in null-sec. If you don't know what a bubble is, it's a device that you anchor in space and then it creates a sphere of warp disruption. And anyone who's trying to warp onto the grid where that sphere is and would pass through it ends up instead landing in the sphere and will not be able to warp until they get out of it, which means that the sphere can do the initial tackle for you, and then you still have to get tackle yourself usually so that you can prevent them from warping off if they do manage to fly out of that sphere of influence. And because the bubble only catches them if their path of warp would go through it and would be landing on the same grid, you need to make sure that you place your bubble very carefully. The classic way to do it is to place a bubble near a gate. You can place the bubble pretty much right on the gate, and then anyone warping to the gate will get caught in it. But in that case, they often will land close enough to be able to jump through the gate, which the bubble doesn't prevent them from doing. So good bubble placement usually involves having the bubble be either a little bit in front of or a little bit behind the gate on the same path that people would be warping to the gate from. So it's most effective in systems with only 2 gates, like this one here, 5 tac F. Then anyone who's warping from one gate to the other, transiting through the system, and isn't using the, clever tricks of warping off to a safe spot or a planet first and coming in from an odd angle, while they're in warp from one gate to the next, their path will pass through your bubble and they'll get stopped right there. I'm dropping off 2 of the bubbles here in the one station in 5 tac F, so that if we lose a bubble or have to flee, we still have the other 2 in reserve. We also see that this one other person who's in local currently is docked up in this station, so that's very good for us to know. Now we have to figure out where exactly to place our bubble. So we're going to warp to the gate that we're planning to place our bubble near first. And then what we do is we fly, so we're right up on top of the gate. And then we're going to fly in the direction towards the other gate. So we want our bubble to be directly in line between these 2 gates. We're going to use a micro warp drive. We want to get about 100 kilometers distance. I think the maximum distance that your bubble can be from the point the target is warping to is 500 kilometers. 100 definitely works, and it's more than enough for our purposes. Placing the bubble like this, actually in between the 2 gates, is called a stop bubble, and it's the easier one to set up the geometry for. There are reasons to actually prefer a drag bubble, which works the same way, except you place the bubble behind the gate rather than in between the gates, and then when the person's warping into this gate, they'll actually be pulled through it to the other bubble. The main advantage of a drag bubble over a stop bubble is that when the person comes out of warp, their inertia is carrying them further away from the gate they want to go to, and they'll have to turn around, rather than potentially they land in your bubble and then can just burn straight forwards towards the gate. But in this situation, with what we're doing today, the people we're hoping to catch, whether it's a drag bubble or a stop bubble, it's probably going to work exactly the same for us. So we're going to go with the easier one to set up. Now that we've got our spot, 144 kilometers, we right click on the bubble in our inventory and we launch for self. And there it is. Now it's not active yet, it's just sitting there in space. In order to make it actually have its warp disruption properties, we need to anchor it. And for this we had to train the anchoring skill, and now we have to wait 120 seconds before this bubble becomes active. Now we're also going to bookmark this spot so that we know exactly where our bubble is if we end up warping around system. This is a pretty low traffic system that we've chosen for this first experiment, so we may have to wait for a while to potentially catch someone, but I wanted to choose somewhere quiet to begin with, just while we're getting a feel of things, because there is always a danger here that you're like a dog chasing a car and you won't know what to do once you catch it. We could end up catching a T3 cruiser or a whole fleet in our bubble, and the higher traffic of a system that we set this up in, the more likely that is to happen. I've spent some time out in this area of space with Bill, ratting and whatnot, and what I've seen is that very frequently the people traveling through these systems are just single people in frigates, in shuttles, which we won't be able to catch because shuttles are naturally immune to warp bubbles, or in interceptors and covert op ships. So whatever we catch here, even if we can't kill it, it shouldn't be an immediate emergency for us to have caught it. And our bubble's up. So here you can visually see the sphere within which this mobile warp disruptor will be disrupting warp. Now to make sure it works, we're going to need to warp over to the TXW tack gate and then try warping from there to 8V tack and see if this bubble is correctly placed to catch us. But we won't be able to warp right now because we're in our bubble, and our bubble also disrupts our own warp. So first thing we have to do, burn out of the bubble. Now you can see we're visually out of the bubble. We should be able to warp to TXW tack at 0 with no problem. And then here at TXW tack, we're in the same position more or less that we would be in if we had just jumped through this gate. So now we do a little test where we are role-playing as the prey. We jumped into 5 tack F from TXW tack. We want to go to 8V. We just click warp to gate. And if we have placed our bubble correctly, we won't land on the gate. We'll land in the bubble. There we are. We've dropped out of warp. The gate is still 150 kilometers away. We're in trouble. Now I've stopped the ship because there's another important thing you want to do in the situation where we are trying to hunt, for example, covert ops frigates, or even better, something like a blockade runner. If someone warps cloaked from gate to gate and they land in this bubble, you'll see they don't land in the middle of the bubble. They land at the edge of the bubble in the direction they warped from, and their inertia carries them slightly inside. Someone who's cloaked... Oh. Cancel the description. We're gonna try and kill an interceptor. Oh, he's too fast for us. We should double check and see. He's from Camelot. Now we're in some trouble, because the situation you don't want to be in when you are running a bubble camp is one where someone knows your bubble is there and might well be calling in backup. We're gonna have to wait here for a second and see what Surge 3234 is going to do with this information. Okay, he's left. We're going to pick up where we left off and imagine that didn't happen. Although now we do have to be concerned if we see a bunch of Camelot people jumping into system that they know this bubble's here and could be coming to try and bust the camp. When you're solo bubble camping, you do have to move around a fair bit, because once you've been spotted by someone who's part of a group, there's heat on you and you will eventually have to shed it. Although the other thing that we've learned, which is super useful to know about our bubble placement here, is that that interceptor warped from the station, and warping from the station, he still got caught in our bubble. That is good information to have. Now, we warp back to 8V tack. We will land in the bubble. The reason we're warping back into our bubble is because the specific place that we land when we warp into the bubble from this gate is actually of significance to us. As I was saying, if someone's warping cloaked, they'll land in the bubble, but we won't know they're there because they'll still be cloaked. But you can't stay cloaked well within 2 kilometers of something. And so that's why we've brought the carbon. We're going to jettison this carbon 1 unit at a time, right around where we land when we warp into the bubble. Now you'll see it didn't jettison exactly where we are. It jettisoned 1.2 kilometers away. There is some random jitter to where your cans spawn when you jettison something. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly jettison all 20 of this carbon 1 unit at a time and create a whole cluster of jet cans right around this point in our bubble. And then when someone warps in a Cov-Op ship, they will land almost certainly within 2 kilometers of at least one of our cans, because there is some random jitter in where they land as well, and be decloaked, and that's when we strike. Now we can't jettison another can immediately. There is a cooldown, but we're going to bookmark this spot, and then we're going to move out of the bubble. Because if, for example, that interceptor returns with friends, we want to be able to warp off to a safe spot. So we'll sit here, which is within scram range of the spot where they'll land. And so as soon as someone lands, we will lock and scram them. But if something lands that we can't deal with, we can still GTFO. And every 3 minutes, we'll fly back over to our jet can spot, drop another carbon, and then fly over here to our nearby perch. This can be a waiting game. It's a lot like fishing. We've got our line in the water, and we don't know how long it's going to take for something to bite. but eventually something will. We just have to hope it's not some eldritch kraken. Has it been 3 minutes yet? Now, while we're waiting, it is generally wise to be looking at the nearby gate, because we are also watching local. We're currently alone in system, and as soon as local spikes to 2, one of the 2 gates in the system will flash unless they've logged in space or in the station. But if local spikes to 2 and this gate flashes, we have to be prepared to run, because the person who comes through it will not get caught in our bubble and could easily come try and attack us. If this gate doesn't flash, then we have to be ready for game time, because it's very likely someone just jumped in the other gate and is on their way to this one. So interceptors and Cov-op ships and a couple of other ships can fit interdiction nullifiers, which give them the ability to become temporarily immune to warp bubbles. Shuttles are the only ships that are inherently immune to warp bubbles at all times. Now, the interdiction nullifier has a cooldown, so you can't just be warping gate to gate quickly and nullifying yourself at every single gate, which means people are usually only using it when they detect danger. So that interceptor that landed in our bubble, he didn't have his nullifier active when he warped a gate, but once he did land in the bubble, he activated his nullifier, and that's what allowed him to warp out of it. At least I'm pretty sure that's what happened. It's possible also that he slow-boated the very small distance outside of the bubble and then warped, but it didn't look like that was what happened. I'm really sad that we weren't able to lock him fast enough. Killing an interceptor right off the bat like that would have been so good. But of course, one of the primary characteristics of an interceptor is a tiny signature radius, which makes them very slow to lock. Probably 3 minutes has passed again. Oh, another critical thing to know when choosing what system you're going to try this technique in is that you want to choose a system where 2 gates are outside of D-scan range of each other. If the 2 gates are within D-scan range of each other, then obviously anyone who jumps through the gate is going to see on their D-scan that there is a mobile small warp disruptor out in system somewhere, and someone who's paying any attention and knows anything about the mechanics of the game will at that point be like, well, I'm not warping straight gate to gate with a bubble out there somewhere. This technique is dependent on the element of surprise. While we're waiting, I can talk a little bit more about this fit. You'll notice that I've got 2 mag stabs in the lows, and I've also got 2 damage rigs in the rig slots. The only tank that we fit is a damage control 1. That does make us pretty flimsy, but in this situation, we really want to be prioritizing maximum damage as quickly as possible, because with the element of surprise, we might be able to take out some things that would actually be able to defeat us in a straight fight, and also against ships like Astros, which are the targets we have to think about the most carefully. Having high damage is more important than having a tank. An Astro actually does do pretty decent DPS for a Cov-ops equivalent ship with its drones. It puts out about 100. Also, an Astro has a really substantial tank. Even a non-bling Astro can easily perma-rep 120, 150 damage per second. So we need to make sure that our DPS is high enough that we can not only overcome that rep capability, but also overcome it by enough to kill the Astro before its drones can kill us. With 300 DPS, the math works out in our favor. This is very much a ganking situation. Okay, someone's jumped into local, and our gate here did not flash, which means there is a good chance that they are currently in warp to our bubble. Me, that's not them. They are not a member of Camelot. Oh, it's a shuttle. The shuttle is going to safely just warp right through our bubble without being caught. False alarm. Each time a shuttle warps through the system like that, though, we are in a little bit more danger, because the number of intel channels in which a message may have appeared saying lone catalyst with bubble 5 TAC F has gone up, and the chances of somebody deciding they're going to come bust us up in a T3 cruiser or something will eventually reach 100%. But we're going to give this a while longer before we relocate to a different system. It's a waiting game. Ice fishing. Crack a beer, open a book. Okay. Here we go again. Zerg Reborn, yet another corp. I didn't see a gate flash, although I confess that I am watching less closely than I was in the first hour I was doing this. My eyes were on my other monitor, and I just noticed someone appear in local. I don't think they came in through the 8V tech gate. Come on, Alex Akari. What are you flying? We're currently in our bubble. Let's at least fly to the edge of the bubble. Okay, Alex, now I'm ready for you. Now, please appear. Karen incoming. Come on. In the bubble. Wow, he missed the bubble. God damn it. Came in from a safe spot. He came in from this direction up here, and there's nothing over there. Okay, back to waiting. Story time. When all the warriors had been assembled, arranged in proper order with their leaders, the Trojans marched with calls and cries like birds, just like the cries of cranes across the sky, when they escape torrential winter rains, and fly away towards the streams of ocean and bring destruction to the pygmy people. Out of the air, they strike and start the conflict. The Greeks march silently, breathing aggression, their hearts determined to protect each other. As on the peaks of some high mountaintop, the south wind notice pours a fog so thick that nobody can see beyond a stone's throw, unwelcome to the shepherds, but for thieves, better than night. Menelaus was thrilled to set his eyes on godlike Paris, believing he would make the culprit pay. Oh! A new contender. Another corp yet. He's in a shuttle. He's warping on through. Where was I? When godlike Paris Alexander saw him appear among the foremost line of fighters, his confidence was battered and he slunk back to his group of friends, avoiding death. Across the plain, they carried each other. Ares, the god of tears, the god of war, but now they sit in silence. War has ceased. The warriors lean back against their shields. Paris and Menelaus, friends of Ares, will fight a duel for you with long spears. You will be called the winner's loving wife. Time for me to take a break. Let me know if you would like to see more bubble camping and possibly PvP, or if you would rather I spin this off into a new series of me just reading you the entirety of Homer's Iliad. I'm happy either way. Okay, the bubble is down and ready to be scooped to cargo. We spent 90 minutes sitting here waiting for some prey, and though we had a couple of close calls, there was nothing yet for us to kill. But this is a game of patience. Okay, it's been a little bit, and we're giving this another go. We've moved 2 jumps to a slightly higher traffic system in Syndicate. That Ibis is not going to get caught. It warped through in the other direction. But already, while we were setting up this bubble, I saw 3 or 4 people pass through the system. So I have a feeling there's not going to be quite as much nothing's going on downtime here in KV Tech, since we're in between the entrance from Syndicate to Outer Ring and also the more populous exit to Placid. I think we're going to get some action here. The only question at hand is whether the action is going to be us getting sweet kills or us being quickly stomped by a small gang in T3 cruisers and interceptors. Let's find out. Everyone's coming through the gate that we are sitting at. And now here comes a worm on D-scan, which I can pretty safely assume would kill us, but it is in fact our friend Jack Sparrow, who's a member in good standing of the Angel Cartel. And now we're alone in system. Let's see how long it stays that way. Nipix Cobrow passed through the system before while I was setting up, so he knows I'm here. Sunesis. He's got it named Klein Transporter, though. Presumably He's smart enough not to land in the bubble. Yeah. But what about Shadar Kai? Does Shadar Kai know I'm here? Stiletto. Go, go, go. We caught him. He's burning for the... Is he gonna make it through? Oh no! Our bubble's too close. How did he get through under afterburner power? Oh, that's frustrating. I knew this was too close. What about you, Serg 3234? Are you gonna let me redeem myself? Claw. Landing in my bubble. Caught him as well. I'm about to go off like a weapon. Fuel to the top, got a filled up bench. This time he's going down. In my thoughts obsession, I will not boom. I'm never second guessing. It worked. For the first time it worked. Hit the pod as well. Good fight. Finally. Oh my goodness. A damage control too. Okay, I need to loot all this stuff. I need to admire it in a minute. From safety. Look at that. Let's see this kill mail. Serg 3234 Camelot. He saw us when we were gay camping before, but he wasn't spooked when he saw us again. He's flying back in a non-combat interceptor. Haul and loot. Oh, wow. Shadow Tungsten M. These faction mods that he was hauling aren't especially valuable to us, but damage control 2 and 2 inertial stabilizer 2s. That is incredible. Oh man, what am I gonna put that damage control 2 on? Tech 2 mods in the bank. Didn't have to build them. I do wish that cloaking device had dropped. I'll say that much though. Wow. And what's with this Thrasher Thucker Tribe skin 30 days? Oh, thank you, Surge. Oh, Surge is back. Is he coming for revenge? In a stabber. And he's flying towards me. Sorry, Surge. I do respect the effort, seriously. You can kill my bubble. He killed my bubble. You can take my carbon. I won't begrudge you that at all. But your inertial stabilizer 2s and your damage control 2 especially are mine. Anyone want to translate for me? I assume that means good fight and safe travels. No, he's following me through the systems, and he has something else to say to me. I assume that means I'm a fan of the series. He's probably a fan of the YouTube series. We're back. Our small warp disruptor was destroyed by a slightly miffed Surge 3234, but this is why we made more than one and brought more than one out here with us. Let's get back to it. We're going to try that same system again that was so successful for us, but we're going to place our bubble a little bit further from the gate this time. Okay, someone has jumped into system. Yeah, it was an interdictor. Are they going to come try and mess with me? Someone else just jumped in system as well. Oh wait, they're of the same group. They're the same group. Okay. Oh, they killed my bubble. I asked so nicely too. So big ol' meanies have blown up 2 of the 3 mobile warp disruptors that we brought out here with us. But we've got 1 left. Well, that's a lot of people in local suddenly. This is the problem with being in a higher traffic area, is sometimes local doesn't spike 1 at a time. Sometimes it spikes 8 at a time. Gnosis. And a vagabond. And the Gnosis has landed on me? Right, I should have seen that coming. Gnosis MJD'd onto me. That was entirely on me. I was like, oh, he's 100 kilometers away. I have a minute to think about what I do next. Forgot that MJD existed. Now send me back home to my bubble factory. Oh, and a malediction actually got caught in the bubble. They're leaving without killing me. What kind of jerks? Alright, fine. I'll do it myself. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Vagabond. So, I guess what I've successfully demonstrated here is that though it can be a long, slow fishing expedition to run a solo bubble camp with a Tech 1 destroyer in a quiet pipe system, that may be the best place to run a solo bubble camp with a Tech 1 destroyer. Things got hot over there in MHC Tech pretty darn fast. But now we've got a shortcut home and we're ready to build some more bubbles. I don't know if we're going straight back out to Syndicate to do that again. I still have a lot of plans, but I will tell you that is not the last time we anchor a bubble in null-sec. That was fantastic. So I'm back at home, admiring my kill mails while a new crop of bubbles bakes in the oven. And I noticed a couple of things that I'd missed before in my haste looking at this kill mail out in null-sec. The first is, well, I honestly cannot complain about what did drop for me. I hadn't noticed before that Shadow Serpentis medium armor repairer. That's a shame. That would have been real nice for Thelma. But the real surprise was not on this claw kill mail at all. Hats off to Serg3234 for being so polite and local after I'd just blown up his billionist pod. I mean, I don't speak Russian, but those messages certainly seemed in good spirits. Whew. Okay, let's go. Round 2.